From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
At the Legislature today, the state Senate has passed 174 bills. The House has passed 146. With just over a week left to the session, we'll check in with the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. Both say this session is running very smoothly. Also tonight, we'll check in with the bills to curb domestic violence. Advocates say these new proposed laws would make for a safer state of family on the Legislature today. Good evening, I'm Beth Voorhees. After a lengthy House debate yesterday, the major mine safety bill pushed by Governor Tomlin and House Speaker Rick Thompson moved through its first major Senate hurdle with lightning speed today. As Bob Brunner reports, the bill may be headed to the governor's desk by early next week.
The statue of the coal miner on the Capitol grounds is mute testimony to the massive role coal plays in the past, present, and future of the state. The Senate Energy, Industry, and Mining Committee faced only a few lobbyists and lawyers as it took up the massive legislation today. Committee Attorney Gretchen Murphy summed it up, saying the bill
establishes drug testing requirements, revises the process for development of ventilation plans, establishes the requirements for methane monitoring and rock dusting, and changes several safety-related minor training requirements.
Under brief questioning, Governor Tomlin's chief counsel assured senators that miners who fail drug tests will get another chance to get clean before their certificates are revoked.
As part of this legislation, the Board of Coal Mine Health and Safety will establish guidelines that will be put into legislative rule that will govern the disciplinary actions administered by the Board of Appeals.
Committee Chair Senator Doug Facemeyer says the House did most of the work on the bill, and as long as there is labor and industry support, it will move quickly.
This bill has been beat around a lot. There's been a lot of discussion and sometimes some very heated arguments, but they got it worked out. Industry is happy with it. The labor side is happy with it. We feel it's a good bill and are happy to get it passed out. It's on the fast track. We hope to take it to the floor tomorrow, suspend the rules, and pass it out so it can get put into law as soon as possible.
But State Coal Association lobbyist Chris Hamilton indicates that industry still believes the measure needs some changes.
I think that we've been involved in the process. We're not pleased with all the provisions. We don't support all the provisions, but it is it's a bill that should serve to enhance mine safety going forward, but probably needs a little tweaking and some further discussion on some of the issues.
Still, Committee Vice Chair and Logan County Senator Art Kirkendall, whose area relies on coal more than most, says this will be a major step forward.
We want to mine coal. We want to have this as our major industry in southern West Virginia, but we want to do it as safely as we can. And I think all the stakeholders, they had I'm sure, some tough conversation. There were issues about safety issues regarding certain aspects of the mining industry. They simply sit down over a long process, and all the stakeholders came up with a bill they all thought they could live with, and I applaud the legislators for taking the time to look at the consideration of all the work and diligence these people put forth to make the miner as safe as they can be.
It was nearly a decade ago that this statue of a West Virginia coal miner joined other historic and legendary representations at the state capitol. Since then, there have been 2 mine disasters, and now there is legislation nearly ready to go to the governor, which would make coal mining in West Virginia as safe as it has ever been in the state's history. Depending on whether there will be significant efforts to amend the bill on the floor of the Senate, the massive legislation could go to the governor by Friday or Monday. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Bob Brunner in Charleston.
During election years, legislative sessions are usually unproductive and feature significant political infighting. This year, there's been practically none of that. Senate President Jeff Kessler credits his leadership team with keeping all of the major legislation on track and the calendar moving smoothly. With only 9 days remaining, Kessler says the public should know their leaders are making a special effort to work together.
I think you can read that your government's working very well. The people back home ought to take great comfort in the fact that, their state government is working very efficiently and getting the job done. I mean, in fact, it's the truth. I mean, the governor's been working very hard to advance his agenda. We've been working in unison with him to improve legislation, to make sure the final product at the end of the session, when this week from now, on the March 10th, or I guess 9 days from now, that we can say that we've had a very productive session, and I think we're on track to do exactly that.
Kessler is meeting with Governor Tomlin and House Speaker Rick Thompson today to decide priorities for the final 9 days of this legislative session. And with just 9 days left, the House of Delegates is on to considering Senate bills. Adam Cavalier spoke with House Speaker Rick Thompson today about where legislation is headed as the session wraps up.
Speaker Thompson, a couple major initiatives already passed by the West Virginia legislature and signed by the governor in OPEB and the cracker plant, mine safety working its way through the Senate. Your thoughts on the overall process and progress of this legislative session?
Well, the best I've seen. We've been able to keep the major legislation moving. We've moved a lot of legislation. All of it's major here, but we've been able to keep those items going throughout the session as opposed to waiting to the last minute. As usual, there'll be some the last minute. That's unavoidable, but I'm pleased with how the session has progressed so far.
Mine safety legislation goes through the House on Tuesday. You give an emotional floor speech. Take me through your thought process in speaking to a bill that passes unanimously.
Well, it was very difficult for me in my situation, and standing at the podium listening to the other delegates who likewise were very emotional about the bill. It was very, very hard for me to get through it. But I did believe that something I might say might make our minds safer and our miners safer. So I wanted to go down and talk about those things. It was that important to me personally, to make sure we pass meaningful legislation the best we could do to make our minds safer, and also to mainly point out we shouldn't wait for disasters. The Director of Mine Safety should be coming to us and telling us what resources he needs, what changes he needs in order to do his job and make our mines safer.
That mine safety bill had to wait on a week on second reading. What were the negotiations like, getting all the details ironed out?
Well, the negotiations went beyond the House and the governor. They went to the Senate also. So we wanted everybody to be involved. Obviously, a lot of us don't know a whole lot about coal mining. I mean, even if we have personal tragedies, we don't know the processes and the machinery. A lot of it's updated. So we wanted to seek input from all the affected parties to let us know what this means or that means. And then we made a decision on what was good policy and talked with them and got them to say, yes, that's good policy.
Crossover days happened. You're on Senate bills from here on out. What's the process like?
Well, it's very difficult. Today we will meet Democrat rules. We'll look at some of the measures that passed in the last couple of days, go through those items. The chairs will be getting their stuff going. We'll have to do a lot of committees really quick in this short time period, and then we will bring them down and try to get everything from the committee to the floor by Wednesday in order to read it 3 days, which would be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and the last day of passage Saturday.
What's it like to trim down a list of bills from 2,000 to just a shade over 300?
Well, it's very difficult. It's a committee process. It's a give and take, and people talking with different people who are interested in different pieces of legislation. And it's very difficult, and it's made on purpose, I think, to be difficult, because enacting a law is a very serious obligation we have. So I think there's a reason for it being so difficult.
Major pieces of legislation still to be passed, drug bills out there, texting bills out there. What do you expect from those?
I think you'll see movement on the texting bill early. I think they've been working on that legislation. Judiciary will be meeting in the next couple of days. And I think you'll see some movement on the substance abuse bill to go through my health committee first. And I know that my chairman, Delegate Perdue, is very interested in working on that piece of legislation. I think there'll be a good dedication on all those major pieces that we continue to work on.
Speaker Thompson, always a pleasure. Thanks for the time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
State's 2 U.S. senators are hailing good economic news. Senators Joe Manchin and Jay Rockefeller praised Toyota after the company announced it's expanding its motor manufacturing plant in Buffalo. The company will spend $45 million to increase its production capacity and provide 80 new jobs. This news on the heels of yesterday's announcement regarding Century Aluminum in Jackson County. The company is restoring health care benefits to its retirees. The move is the first step to restarting the plant, which closed in 2009. Jackson County Republican Mitch Carmichael says bringing back Century's 600 jobs has major implications.
It's huge from an economic development perspective, not just for Jackson County and the surrounding areas, but for the entire state of West Virginia. I believe Century Aluminum and as well as the adjoining plant there represent the industrial might of the Mid-Ohio Valley. And we know how to build things in this country and in West Virginia and in Jackson County, and we'll manufacture and outproduce and outwork any competitor throughout the world.
Carmichael gave an impassioned floor speech just last week to promote House Bill 4632, which he said would provide incentive to put the Jackson County plant back online, a move Carmichael says he made because of some familiar faces in attendance.
I looked in the galleries and I saw the Century Aluminum retirees that had their health care diminished as a result of this action by the company. Now, so I gave a little talk on the fact that I felt Century Aluminum owed those retirees a obligation in terms of their health care. And now here we are, they've met their demands, and it's a great day for the state of West Virginia.
Both House and Senate versions of the bill have stalled in committees. In a moment, advocates against domestic violence are watching several bills very closely. Now here's a look at some of the bills that have passed both houses of the legislature and are awaiting action by the governor. Senate Bill 221, creating the Jason Flatt Act of 2012 to provide for the routine education of all professional educators and school service personnel having direct contact with students on warning signs and resources to assist in suicide prevention. Senate Bill 224, to change the name of the Division of Banking to the Division of Financial Institutions. And Senate Bill 564, to rewrite the laws concerning funds for state travel management. The bill creates the Aviation Fund and the Fleet Management Office Fund. The bill was recommended for passage by the Department of Administration. Early in this legislative session, the West Virginia Coalition Against Domestic Violence held a news conference at the Capitol to focus on Senate Bill 222. The bill makes it illegal to stop someone from calling 911 for help. The bill passed the Senate on February 8th. It now sits in the House Judiciary Committee. Joining us tonight to speak to this issue and other issues at the legislature is Angie Rosser, the Communications Director for the West Virginia Against Domestic Violence, and Marcia Drake, Executive Director of Women's Aid and Crisis in Elkins and co-chair of the Coalition's Board of Directors. Welcome to you both. Glad you're here.
Thanks.
So we first talk about Senate Bill 222. It did pass the Senate very readily, but it has been sitting in the House Judiciary Committee since early February. What do you know about this bill?
Well, it's a bill that came to us from the law enforcement community as well as assistant prosecutors who worked to draft this, and what they brought to our attention, which we've known a long time from what victims tell us happens, is when they are under attack while they're being beaten or afterwards and attempt to call 911 for emergency services, the batterer, the abuser, will attempt to interfere. And what this looks like is pulling the phone lines out of the wall, destroying the cell phones. So when law enforcement arrive on the scene, they're seeing destroyed phones. We're also hearing disconnected 911 calls. And there are currently no consequences for that action. And the bill would make this a misdemeanor crime for interfering with someone's ability to access emergency services, which we think is a basic right. And if people are able to do that, it would reduce further harm and injury.
If you don't get it this year, will you be back?
I think we will. I mean, it's such a common occurrence. And it definitely sends a message that, again, assures everyone has the right to access emergency services. And this extends also to medical emergencies and fires. So we think that it's important to be able to have those services that could really help reduce injury and save lives.
Marcia, tell me about Women's Aid in Crisis in Elkins. What do you do?
Women's Aid in Crisis is one of 14 licensed domestic violence programs in the state of West Virginia, and we provide services in 6 counties in north central West Virginia. All counties in West Virginia are covered by one of our programs. We have shelters, 14 shelters, and other services that we provide to victims of domestic violence.
You also wanted to talk about the personal safety order. This is on first reading in the House. Provides a new protective order process for victims of sexual violence or stalking who do not qualify for domestic violence protective orders but are in need of protection. Can you explain this?
That's right. This is a very significant piece of legislation, very important. We've worked on for many years. What people don't realize is that we only have one type of protection order. It's the domestic violence protection order. That's only available to people who are victimized by a family or household member. So if you are sexually assaulted by an acquaintance, a stranger, someone who you don't share that past relationship with, currently there's no access to a protection order. There's no such thing in our state as a general restraining order, as people commonly think. People were surprised to hear this doesn't exist. So what this bill does is create a new type of protection order for these people who aren't eligible for the domestic violence but have been attacked, violated, stalked, and are asking the court for relief to keep this offender away from them, to cease any contact or further abuse, again trying to enhance protection for these victims.
Marcia, in your work, would this be a help?
Oh, this would be a wonderful help, yes. We find that there is a group of victims who simply don't have any recourse. A stalking victim by a stranger would be one of those folks. It would take a very long time and a lot of documentation to finally reach a point that there could possibly be an arrest. The same with a sexual violence victim. If there isn't an arrest, there is no protection for however long it takes to make it to the criminal side of things.
One of the bills moving through is a domestic violence court pilot project.
Yes.
Tell me about this.
This is something else new, although hundreds of these are in place across the nation, but not in West Virginia. And the concept is that a domestic violence specialized court would have one judge who would hear both the criminal misdemeanor cases of domestic violence as well as the civil protection orders. In West Virginia, those are in two different courts, family court and magistrate court. So this pilot project is to see if it has the benefits, because we think there are many potential benefits of having one judge getting all the information about the parties involved in terms of protection orders, past criminal histories, to help them make informed choices about how to keep victims safer and to monitor compliance with defendants involved in these cases.
And I noted the legislation says that current judges, the current structure of the court system, would take this on as a pilot project. It wouldn't be a separate court.
That's correct. That's important, that this does not mean any new judges, that the idea is to use existing judges to kind of restructure in one county how this might happen, and the court will come back in 2 years and again in a third year to tell the legislature to report back how is this working. And that's important to us to know. That evaluation component is really important to see if this is in fact reaping some benefits and increasing safety.
Do you feel that you're making progress in curbing domestic violence in the state with all the education, with all the services that you provide? Are we lessening the incidence of it?
There's no doubt that we are making a difference. The awareness campaigns, the prevention campaigns that are in our schools, all of those are starting in the kindergarten, in the first grade, in the second grade, and hopefully teaching our students how to behave in life situations. And we know that we're making a difference because people are calling us now. They're contacting us. Police are coming to us. We're seeing a huge difference in what we're seeing as domestic violence in West Virginia.
How long have you been working in this field?
19 years in my case, 19 years today.
Why did you get involved?
For me, it's been a passion for many years. It's something I've supported and felt that it was just exactly why I was born. This is the work that I was supposed to do.
Very interesting. Angie Rosser and Marcia Drake of the West Virginia Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, Beth.
And there are no bills up for passage on second reading in the Senate tomorrow. So here's a look at what's coming up in the House tomorrow. Among the bills up for passage in the House tomorrow, Senate Bill 100 to remove the requirement that the circuit clerk charge 3 times the amount of actual postage when mailing certain documents. Senate Bill 385 to update and expand the definition of computer as it relates to certain crimes to include laptop personal computers, tablet personal computers, cellular telephones, game consoles, and any electronic data storage device or equipment. Senate Bill 429 to expand the definition of Class A vehicles to include larger pickup-type trucks registered at between 8,000 and 10,000 pounds. This change would allow these vehicles to display special license plates and allow sheriffs to renew these registrations in their offices. The bill also designates farm trucks as Class X. Among the bills on second reading in the House tomorrow, Senate Bill 191 to provide for the protection of non-family or non-household members who do not otherwise qualify for protection under the domestic abuse statute. This year, for the first time in its history, the state Senate is doing its business on computers rather than paper. Senate clerks have been using computers for years, but the senators themselves always relied on printed copies of legislation. For some, it's a welcome change. For others, it's still a worry. Bob Brunner reports.
Every once in a while on the Senate floor, you will see some technicians gathered around a senator working on a problem. It's usually the new iPad each senator uses to read each bill, track the progress of committees, and consider amendments. Instead of a pile of hundreds of documents, each containing 10 to 100 pages, the desks contain only the small computer. For veteran senators like Donna Boley, it's been a tough transition.
It's been hard to begin with because we did it, just cold turkey. We had the bill book where you could always thumb and get your bills last year and the last 20-some years I've been here. And now you have just a computer, the iPad. So you really have to get some training on the iPad. And the staff has been very helpful. As you've probably witnessed, they've been around showing me how to use it. And it's getting easier. But when the bills come up, you need to get to those bills right away. And sometimes it's hard. You'll hit the wrong thing and your screen goes blank. So I'm getting it.
Ohio County Senator Orphy Klempa has an installation on his desk for his iPad, and other senators say he was the quickest to adapt. Klempa likes the new technology.
I like it because I don't have to shuffle through a whole bunch of papers here on my desk, and it's all right here on the screen. And I've really been blessed with not having a fear of technology. I mean, I'll just jump into something. And I was taught a long time ago when all this modern technology came on that don't be afraid to do anything on it. We got people educated on how to fix it. So I'll just go on there and I'll do whatever I have to do. And if something happens, I know we got somebody around here who can correct it. And I just don't have a fear of it. It makes it easy to work with it.
The computer guru on the Senate floor is Richie Novak. He's often called to help when senators have problems, but he says the transition has been very smooth.
Most of it is just learning how to use the device. It's still new technology, and they're just getting used to it, and just normally just implementing new technology. I mean, you have a learning curve that you have to deal with.
This seems to have been pretty smooth.
It has been going better than what I expected it to, but it's been nice.
Down in the journal room, it's a huge difference. Instead of piles and piles of bills in every corner and overflowing more than 100 boxes, it looks neat and mostly empty. Bobby Legg has been operating here for 20 years.
That's because now we're on bills on demand. Used to be we had 200 bills every day for each slot, each number. Now we're down to 2 or 3 bills a day, and we do it on demand. If someone comes in and they want 40 bills, we run them. That way, at the end of the session, we don't have all these bills to put in recycle, because we always recycled.
And the fact that they're carrying all these things around on these old computer pads, does that help?
It certainly does. Just for instance, we used to rent boxes here with every bill of the session went in these boxes. We've went from 100 and some boxes to about 27.
In past years, by this time of the session, the senators would have a stack of paper generally about this high of all the bills that have been introduced. Now they have what they call an iPad, and everything's in there. Some of the senators say it's been an easy transition. Some of the senators say they're still getting used to it.
Still in question is how the system will operate on the frantic final nights when conference committees amend bills in hallways and amendments are scrawled on legal pads. For West Virginia Public Broadcasting, I'm Bob Brunner in Charleston.
And this has been the Legislature Today. Tomorrow, we'll talk with Booth Goodwin, the United States Attorney for Southern West Virginia, about the developments into the investigation into the Upper Big Branch mine disaster. We'll also discuss the governor's bill to curb drug abuse in the state, a priority of Mr. Goodwin's. I'm Beth Voorhees. Thanks for joining us. Good night.